Greetings, I'm Shad, and welcome to my analysis of the defences of Whiterun, which is one of the main cities in the video game The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Now, before we begin, just on a realism note, I will point out, of course, the big problem with this city is the size, because in reality, what we're seeing here is not the size of a real city, it's a secure commune, a small village, really, that has a wall around it. But of course I understand why this is the case, it's a limitation in the video game. So that's really neither here nor there, I'm just pointing it out. So, is Whiterun an effectively fortified city? And I will call it a city just for the sake of the game, even though in reality it's not the right size. Well, it's very interesting because there is a yes and a very big no. Looking at the city from above, the layout is actually very, very good. There are several layers of defense. The main entrance to the city has two gatehouses to defend it, which also causes any attacker who is trying to get through those gatehouses to follow a preset path in which, if taken advantage of, those enemies would be under the defender's arrow fire and attacks constantly. The problem is, that's really not being taken advantage of, and I'll get to that. But still, fundamentally, in the basic layout, this is perfect, it's beautiful. And this can also be said for the layout of the rest of the city. Once they or if the enemy gets through these outer gates and breaches the city, there is an internal wall dividing the city in two, meaning the enemy has only taken half of the city. And if the walls were built properly and effectively, the defenders of the city would be able to get atop the ramparts that really should be there, but they're not. Again, I'll get to it. The ramparts that should be there on the wall that is dividing the city into two, and then defend the rest of the city from the enemy that has breached the first part. And then again, if the enemy breaches the second part, they still haven't got to the palace main structure where the Lord is living. And I call it palace main structure because Dragon's Reach, I wouldn't really call a castle. But in regards to Whiterun's layout, it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. Everything falls apart after that. Now, part of this might be in regards to the lore of the city. One of the themes that you really see around Skyrim is that everything, in terms of the stone structures, do seem to be in some state of disrepair unless they are kind of occupied by the Imperial forces. And there are exceptions, but all the main kind of castles and forts that you see scattered throughout Skyrim, they're in ruins. And the walls around Whiterun are no exception to this. There are no ramparts anywhere for anybody to be able to be atop these walls, to be protected while they're atop them, and to be able to fire down on enemies on the outside. There are tower-like alcoves, kind of like wall bastions, that have small shelters built atop them, but there's no cover for anyone who would be standing there at all. And this begs the question, is this wall even effective? Well, it's effective in the sense that it would make it difficult for someone from the outside to get on the inside without having to climb it, but there's a very easy way to fix that, and that's called a siege tower. Now, of course, one of the main ways that you defend against a siege tower is to put your wall up a slope or behind a moat or something like that that prevents siege equipment from reaching it. Unfortunately, Whiterun doesn't really have that. Now, it is built on a raised kind of hill, but there are too many areas around the city where the slope or incline is forgiving enough that you could roll a siege tower up to the wall. There are cases in real historical cities where the external terrain also was as forgiving to be able to get siege towers up to the wall, and so then what did they do next? Well, that is where they had battlements atop the walls. A place where the defenders can stand and be protected and try and shoot at people atop the siege tower that is approaching. And then you can try and bottleneck the people on the siege tower trying to get there. You can try and set a light. There's a whole number of things that you can try and do. But say if the siege tower even reaches that, another thing that can be done to try and defend against siege towers is when a part of the wall is breached, you have that wall, or parts of the wall, be self-contained. What I'm saying here is that for a whole wall around a city, you can have them be divided or separated by towers. so that when an enemy takes a wall, they've only taken a small part, and then they have to try and breach towers on either side to get to the other parts of the wall, or indeed the stairs that lead down to the city. And so because Whiterun's outer wall is so poorly maintained, and it doesn't have perfect terrain on the outside to prevent siege equipment from approaching it. It has good terrain, don't get me wrong, okay, because it is built on a hill and there's rocky parts that are, difficult to get around, but I still think you could get a siege tower to it. And so because of this, it really renders the effectiveness of its two outer gatehouses null and void. In regards to a castle or a city, you want the enemy to have no other choice but to try and approach the city or castle from the gatehouse. One of the best historical castles that I've ever seen in its design to promote this. It is just glorious. It is Corfe Castle. And Corfe Castle might be my absolute favourite historical castle amongst all other historical castles. It is built on such a steep incline and prominent, powerful position that there is really, if you want to get inside this castle, especially if you want to try and overtake it, the enemy really has no other choice but to try and get at it through the main gatehouse, because every other direction, it's just suicide. You got to go up this massively steep hill, and then when you get there, there's no real purchase for you to stand upon or set up siege equipment or anything to try and breach the walls in any other position. And throughout all that time, you would be just getting pelted by the defenders on the walls. And then when you look at the only real main approach, it is a gauntlet of absolute death. You have to go across this long, narrow bridge. And I've been doing research to find if it ever had a drawbridge on this bridge or near the gatehouse, and I haven't been able to find it. And because Corfe Castle was unfortunately destroyed, and it breaks my heart.
You maniacs! You blow it up!
That is really my sentiment in regards to Corfe Castle, because it is one of the most beautifully designed castles I have ever seen. And unfortunately, because it is in ruins, it has been very, very hard for me to find accurate, detailed information if it had drawbridges or not. Because it has two primary outer gatehouses. The first almost having a small valley between it and the main town, requiring a whole bridge to get access to it. And the second also has like a deep ditch in front of it, which again requires another small bridge. Both of these gatehouses are perfectly situated to have drawbridges, yet they don't have it. It's an anomaly to me. But aside from this, the castle is just perfect. It has 3 baileys, and to try and take the castle, you have to breach 1, 2, 3 walls, gatehouses to just even get to the keep. And then you still got to deal with the keep. And even if you were to get through the gatehouses, that doesn't mean you've actually taken the walls. You would have to breach the first gatehouse, then take the first outer wall of the outer bailey, but then you still have to deal with the southwest bailey and the second gatehouse. And the walls around that. And once you do that, guess what? You've got the internal bailey and internal wall. Do you see what I've been talking about? When in all my castle reviews, I've been emphasizing that there's a very consistent and strong mentality in regards to castle defense, and it is layers of defense, redundancies. You want to make it as difficult as possible for an enemy to take this position. And Corfe Castle is the best example that I have come across so far that does this. It is just glorious. And so I can really appreciate Whiterun because it is essentially, in its layout, it has the same fundamental design philosophy. It has 2 outer gatehouses that is trying to funnel the enemy into a set path where you can just pile up the defenses and then take them out. The problem is, it just falls apart because there are too many other areas in which you could breach the city and just avoid these outer gatehouses. I bet the people who have tried to take Corfe Castle would have loved it if they could avoid running the gauntlet of trying to take this castle through all the gatehouses and all the outer walls. But the way it is designed and the position of where it is, that is just so impractical, it's impossible. And here's a bit of awesome information in regards to Corfe Castle. In 1643, a force of parliamentarians comprising between 200 and 300 men tried to take this castle away from the people who were left living in it because, the lord and guys left to fight in the war. And the only people left in it was Mary Banks, her daughters, servants, and a force of 5 men. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they held the castle from a force of 200 to 300 men. I kid you not. I mean, how awesome is that? And it just demonstrates in the most profound awesomeness of how effective proper castle defences are. She eventually got aid and got 80 men to join her in trying to protect the castle, and the force attacking it increased from 500 to 600 men. Mary and her small group of defenders defended the upper ward by heaving stones and hot embers from the battlements. They managed to repel the attackers, killing and wounding over 100 men. And then she was betrayed. Someone from the inside, his name was Colonel Pittman, led a party of parliamentarians into the castle via the Sally Gate. As a result, she was forced to surrender the castle, but it was never actually taken by forceful assault. And that's when the scumbags blew it up!
Damn you! God damn you all to hell!
Oh, breaks my heart. So yeah, I just had to share that with you to show you just how profoundly effective proper defences are. But when those defences aren't there, like what we see here at Whiterun, well, yes, things just fall apart. The gatehouses on Whiterun are just a mess. The only way the defenders on top of them would get any type of cover is if they actually ducked behind the small kind of ledge that only comes up to waist height. No crenellations, no matriculations, no murder holes, no battlements or internal walls along the path to the next gatehouses. But there are drawbridges, so it gets points there, but taken all together, these gatehouses are a mess. They're awful. Looking at Dragon's Reach, it's kind of two buildings. It's got like a more square keep kind of back end, and the front end of it is a more Skyrim styled Great Hall. And it's like the merging of the Imperial style, because, I think that back part was actually built by the Imperials, and the front part was built by the Nords. I'm sure many of you who are up to date on the Elder Scrolls lore will correct me on that if I'm wrong, but what's interesting about it is that the back part actually has some kind of clout to claim to be a fortified keep or a castle. Even the lower outside windows look to be kind of arrow slits, or at least thin enough that a person couldn't break through. The front part is a great hall. It would be easy to burn down, break through. There's no places for anyone to take to defend it. There's no battlements, no arrow slits or anything like that. It is on an elevated position, and it kind of has an area that could have a gate on it, but there's no actual gate there, but you could fit a gate. And if you had battlements and ramparts on the wall that's surrounding Dragon's Reach, this could be quite the effective castle. But it's not there. So again, another big missed opportunity. And because of that, yes, I'm reluctant to call this a castle. And I mean a real castle that has proper legitimate battlements and defences. It's more of a great hall or palace. And those are my thoughts on Whiterun as seen in the video game The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And don't worry, I'll be getting to other cities, castles of Skyrim, and indeed Oblivion, because the cities of Oblivion, oh gee, they're actually pretty darn good. So I will get to them eventually. Thank you for watching, I hope you have enjoyed, and until next time, farewell.